Ori, thanks very much indeed. You've set us up beautifully for our first panel session. Please do take a seat. Let me invite our other speakers to come up for the first panel session, and then we'll get going. Brant Dunshea, who is the Vice Chair of the EMHF and CEO of the British Horse Racing Authority. James Gom. James is the Senior Director for Education at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And to Filippo Veglio, and a special welcome to Filippo, joining us from UEFA, where he is Chief of Social and Environmental Sustainability. So our panel. So just to touch on where we're heading for this session, why sustainability matters for the long-term resilience and that social license of racing. What are the global expectations, whether that's from governments, from fans, from investors, and the opportunity to lead, whether that's in land stewardship, climate action, horse welfare, critically. So Brant, let me start with you, because I know at the BHA, you talk about a responsibility in terms of a legal responsibility, a moral responsibility, a commercial responsibility. And I can understand why, but where then does sustainability fit in the BHA model? Because you can talk about these things, but you've got to make it happen.
Yes, over recent years it's been well documented that British racing's rather fragmented, and the industry came together and agreed to this new framework, which was designed to drive growth. And the whole sport agreed to target a range of activities that were designed not only to drive growth from a commercial perspective, but also represented the opportunities that the sport has to do good things for the community in which we operate. And so that included major work streams around environmental sustainability, social impact, looking after our people, equine welfare, in addition to the normal commercial objectives that racing has traditionally pursued. And as part of that work, it was agreed that we would, with the fabulous support of the Racing Foundation, undertake a scoping study to understand where British racing was positioned in terms of environmental sustainability. And immediately following that piece of work, which we published, we, again with the support of the Racing Foundation in Britain, were able to appoint our first head of sustainability, Katie Carr, who's with us today. And Katie has done an amazing job in, and I think this touches on the points that Henri made, in bringing the sport together. This is not about the BHA having all the answers. It was about recognising all the wonderful work that was being undertaken across the sport in Britain, bring everyone together, share those insights, and then work towards an agreed strategy specifically focused on the area of environmental sustainability and climate change. And so that work has now been undertaken and published, and we're now progressing on to now delivering actions from that work. Why is it important? Over the course of the last month in Britain, I may have been surprised for thinking I was still living in my former homeland, Australia. There has barely been any rain. We have had government-related heat warnings on and off. We've had to abandon race meetings. We've had to move start times in some incredibly oppressive conditions for racehorses. All of that obviously impacts the sport and the business. And so it was incredibly important for us as the governing body of the sport in Britain to take a lead and bring the industry along to not only be responsible, but protect the future interests and sustainability of our sport.
So briefly, what does that look like then? What are you doing now? And I appreciate, we're talking about the last 2 months in particular for heat waves, so I don't expect you to have all the answers to that straight away. But what are you doing? What are you providing? What services are you offering to help this amazing list of stakeholders, from breeders, owners, trainers, operators, regulators, you name it, to work together?
Yeah, so we published a strategy earlier this year, late last year, that sets out opportunities for all of us across the sport. So we undertook a materiality study of where there were opportunities for us to bring together, partner with, whether it's race courses, whether it's other stakeholders across the industry, to share ideas, but also potentially look at where there are opportunities for us to improve our efforts to reduce our impact on the environment, but also where we can see those opportunities to partner, exploit new technology, promote new technology, and ultimately to deliver benefits for our stakeholders, but at the same time protect our sport and its future.
Henri also talked about transparency within this whole process, and I think that's a key word in sustainability. How can you show to be held to account? What's your transparency answer?
Well, it is, of course, for us as a sport, the beginning of a journey, and what we are doing as the governing body is taking responsibility for making some commitments and signing up on behalf of racing to a number of different frameworks, which enables us to demonstrate that leadership and hopefully bring others across our stakeholder community along with us. And as I said, they're small steps, but at a very simple level, even just internally within the BHA, where we're now been undertaking data analysis of our own carbon footprint, emissions, our own staff and activities make, and look at areas where we can reduce them.
You mentioned the foundation, which has helped in terms of finance. I want to come to you, Henri, partly about finance. I mean, this is great to hear, and you've laid out the sort of the same principles, I suppose, but it costs money. It costs a lot of money for some of the different stakeholders here. And how do you address that whilst promoting sustainability all the time when some are saying, oh, that's great to say, but we can't afford that?
Yeah. I hope you can hear me. Yes, it's a very good question because it costs, as you said, a lot of money. So in France, as you may probably know, there is gallop racing, but there is also trotting, which is quite important. So we collaborate together under the umbrella of a common organization, which the name is the National Federation of Horse Racing. So it's a common organization, and we put money together, and especially to make some efforts and to make some communication and to make some awareness about sustainability. And we started with the welfare of the horse, because it's obviously it's absolutely critical, and we put money together for this kind of communication. And also we granted new budget for sustainability. I will take a concrete example. There is a new law in France that imposed that you need to have organic fertilizer for the track, for the turf tracks in particular, and it costs a lot of money. We've got the director of Chantilly and training center. Chantilly racecourse, and training center, Marin, who is there, who is an expert on that question. And the budget for that has increased by far, but it's absolutely key, because obviously we need to fulfill the regulation on that topic, but we need also to be in advance in order to demonstrate to the government, to the state, that we are responsible people, because to me, it's very important to have a good relationship with the government on that topic, because otherwise we will suffer some governmental regulation, and it's better to have a collaborative approach with them, but we need to get some trust from the government on that topic. And if I may make a comment on this, As you said, we faced in France a lot of heat waves during the beginning of the summer. And as we put in place a good relationship with the Ministry of Agriculture, they issued a memorandum to the local government to allow us to regulate ourselves. So to trust them when we decide to change the post timing in starting the race day earlier or later in the day. And the message behind that was to say that the racing authority, and France Gallo in particular, is an expert on that topic, and that we need some confidence when we take decision to race and to change the post time.
That's interesting. I mean, obviously, we have very different relationships with government in the two seats here. You're embedded or subsumed within the Department of Agriculture. Brad, I'm not looking for a rant from you, but obviously you have some interesting challenges in terms of, and actually in terms of affordability is the word being used in the betting context, but that has a direct impact on your commercial resilience as well, which must have an impact on your ability to offer sustainable racing.
It does, although personally, I think our approach is that rather than think about the challenges that we're facing more broadly from a financial perspective and our relationship with government, this is actually an opportunity to offset some of those challenges because we've internally started to look at our model in a very different way, and this area around social impact, environmental sustainability, I'm learning all the time, and I can see now where actually the business case just continues to stack up in terms of beyond this being the right thing to do from a business perspective. There are opportunities here for us to grow revenue. There are opportunities for us to partner, to demonstrate the good things we do, and to reduce cost. And all of those things combined, actually, irrespective of the other challenges we're having from a financial perspective with government, they're opportunities rather than I see them as barriers.
Can you just illustrate the growing revenue and reducing cost then? In what way? Give me an example.
We are looking at various different partnership opportunities where, for example, we could potentially partner with, people manufacturing hardware that irrigates racecourses more efficiently, reduces the impact on water consumption, delivers a benefit for the racecourses, and promotes products for the corporate entity. It's those sorts of opportunities that are
so a complete tilt in where your vision is, in a way, in terms of where your support might be in the future.
Absolutely.
James, can I bring you in here? James Gom, who is Senior Director for Education within and I'm going to read it, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, forthwith known as the Council for ease. Obviously, you work closely on how to create a sort of sustainable model within racing, but actually in a much broader world as well. What are the sort of lessons that you think racing can learn from other industrial sectors where you've been involved?
It certainly is a journey. There is no final destination, if you like. It's a constant effort to try and improve and enhance performance. But lots of lessons I think that we can take from that, and also an evolution of the space as that time has gone on as well. I think interesting to see how different sectors have come onto that journey at different stages. I think initially it was the large industrial players who perhaps had a very clear view of the environmental impacts they were having. In recent years, it's been more the tech companies that have come on board, conscious of the impacts that they're increasingly having as AI proliferates and other areas like this. But I think where we see real progress and real moving the needle is when you're able to mobilize a critical mass within a sector to come together and really sort of drive forward, set a common vision of where that sector wants to be, and then also have mutual accountability within the sector through tools and guidelines and frameworks of what good performance looks like. And then you really start to see progress. And then I think the level beyond that is when you're able then to mobilize an entire value chain. So the sector understands its position in the broader value chain offering, and then you start to see real progress. One example is we have a new initiative called our Critical Materials Collective, which is about extracting copper and aluminium, recovering those sort of critical minerals that become increasingly scarce, and finding a way to have the whole system tailored to recovering and reusing and recycling those materials. So I think those are some of the key issues that we're facing, and then that collaboration not only within sector but across value chain is really important. And entirely to Brandt's point, I think there's been a real evolution since that sort of founding space, where sustainability was driven initially, I think, largely by values. Right, it was a small number of companies that sort of had that kind of right thing to do attitude and were trying to push it forward with a moral argument. That evolved quite quickly into a kind of a regulatory-driven environment, which is what we've seen perhaps over the last decade or so, where there's been increasingly strong regulation and intergovernmental movement around setting the direction of travel that businesses has followed. Now I think we're very much, particularly in the sort of the current climate of physical risk and heat waves, we're very much in a business performance-driven environment, where it's very clear that sustainability is a key component of competitiveness. And that's re-cementing itself.
But does that sustain frankly, in our world today? I mean, we've seen, largely courtesy of the Trump administration, a complete shift in terms of attitudes towards net zero, carbon emissions, etc. And we've seen with that lots of sectors that probably you work quite closely with also realizing this is a good opportunity to try and get some of these regulations eased off a bit. That surely makes the whole business of pushing a sustainability agenda that much harder.
Yeah, I think to a degree that is happening, but then I think also that narrative is running away with itself a little bit as well. I think that there have been instances, as you say, of companies that have backed off. Either that's because of a genuine retreat, and that's perhaps where you get the Warren Buffett quote, you don't know who's swimming naked until the sea goes out, right? There are some companies that didn't have the strategy or the plan there, or the strength of will there in the first place. There's a lot of companies, I think, that have just gone more quiet, like so-called green hushing. So fearful of some of the retributions of some of the jurisdictions that are out there, are still committed, are still investing, but are doing so much more quietly. And then many companies still plowing ahead. We did a survey recently of 500 of the top companies. 92% of those companies say they still see sustainability as a key source of competitiveness. 89% said they've actually increased their level of investment in sustainability over the last year. So I think despite the sort of the geopolitical climate and some of the tricky issues that are there, the main sort of business push remains in that sort of direction of travel that we've been seeing.
Okay, and I don't want to overstate this,
No.
but from a very parochial example, the British Conservative Party the leadership has just said, if you're a candidate supporting net zero, we don't want you anymore. You will not be selected to stand in an election. Now that's a pretty bold statement, and I just wonder, in the world you're in the council, how you deal with that.
Yeah, and again,
I mean, that's a pretty massive thing to U-turn on.
yeah, absolutely. When you see it sort of in the general discourse, I mean, you know, I was watching Breakfast News the other day. On the one hand, you've got the news clips of the shocking heat wave, 440 people dying a day across Europe, whatever it is. And in the next instance, you've got people raising concerns about how if Ed Miliband becomes Chancellor, he'll get us into this net zero craziness. So there's a complete disconnect. And I think that's a real issue. And I think that's one of the key challenges we're facing in the sustainability movement is this chronic short-termism that's sort of taking hold a little bit with these 24-hour news cycles that we're seeing, where there's so much happening, so much distraction. And I think as much as anything now, sustainability isn't a technical challenge. You know, the solutions are there. It's a behavioral challenge. And so from a business perspective, trying to take those long-term decision-making and that long-term resilience piece and really drive forward that rather than just reacting to the short-term, you know, news cycles that are actually playing out there. So it's a tough one.
Well, Filippo, it's a similar question for you in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got within UEFA 55 member countries, so there are some parallels you can draw with the racing world as well, I suppose, but obviously no horse for a start. Different sustainability sort of headline concerns, I guess, but a much bigger participation level at the same time. So how have you managed to create a sense of collaboration, as Henri was saying at the start?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want everyone collaborating, working together
Yeah.
without imposing too many rules.
Thanks, David. Difficult question. Is this working now? Yeah? Okay. Difficult question with regard to the collaboration. I'll get to it. I think I want to connect it back to the discussion about social license to operate. We have tried to position in a nutshell UEFA as a membership association, 55. So we live to serve the members, and the members are part of this confederation, one of 6 under the auspices of FIFA. We take a very European view to this in terms of saying, where's the license not only to operate, but also to innovate and to grow. So UEFA wants to grow, like probably every other organization out there. I don't know any organization, whether in sports or anywhere else, whether it involves horse racing, as in IFHA, and thank you for the invitation, or any other sport, wants to grow. Some grow more than others, some are face more challenges than others, some have more revenue than others, absolutely. So we are also in a lucky position, and that has to be acknowledged as UEFA, to be in relatively good financial health. So out of the idea of growing, how do you then move sustainability away from being ad hoc, from being reactive, from being perhaps more sort of a grant-making exercise into a more strategic sort of insourcing? How do you source it back into the organization where you say, where are our material impacts as a sport on society, as a sport on the environment, and what kind of governance systems do we set out around it? And where is it that we want to drive action, not only as an organization selfishly, but also as a member organization like WBCST, like IFHA? How do we work then impact with and through the members? So then you look then, who are we as a governing body? We're a governing body, so we set rules. We have carrots and we have sticks. I think we spoke about it last night. Where is it that we can provide levers? Let me give you a very concrete example. If you are any European club, including here in Porto, and you want to play in the European competitions, for the last 5 years we've worked on changing the rules of the game, not the football game, but what surrounds it. You need to comply with a set of standards that we have set in the area of social and environmental sustainability. There are many others, and that's also a message of today I want to bring on behalf of the European football world. Sustainability is just one among many other components, certainly not going to be the only one, but hopefully can get a seat at the table in terms of driving decision-making. Perhaps not influencing it to the extent that we working in sustainability would like to, but at least being part. Another element is the revenue of UEFA. I'm sure you see some figures and you say, wow, that's a lot of money that goes into Switzerland. Well, I wish it was only going there, but it actually is redistributed back. Over 97% of the commercial revenue and broadcasting revenue is redistributed back into the football pyramid. There also, as a governing body, we have carrots and sticks. So including in the investments, you can allocate then a number of conditions. So for the member federations, each one of them is expected to have a sustainability manager. Each one of them is expected to deliver a sustainability strategy with the corresponding actions. Now, that's 5 years of work where we are slowly getting to the results, and we want to go further. And that's what we have embedded, David and colleagues, into a wider strategy. I'm not going to present the strategy, no worries, but it's basically the idea of investment. So to the question of cost, yes, absolutely, it's a cost. But we have revenue that we could and should allocate, and that's perhaps connected to an important point around risk. There have been instances in the past where UEFA was not necessarily on its best footing in this area and too much reactive. So how do we really shift that conversation from a cost to actually making an investment that is going to secure not only the reputational element, but also the seriousness behind what we can state, be on any topic, social and environmental. So this is a number of things that are playing within our organization, but always with the idea of being a membership organization, remaining one, but working also with a wide set of stakeholders. And I think we'll touch a bit later on the day also on that stakeholder part.
So, I mean, I think your catchline is strength through unity.
Yes,
trying
indeed.
to work together across
Yes.
all the national associations doing the same thing. But at the same time, you can apply sanctions if they don't
Sanctions
deliver?
is a
'Cause I think
big
there could
word,
be a difference here.
and as in any member, and this is recorded, so this might get me in trouble. No, I think sanctions is a big word, but there is an element of, look, this is no longer nice to have, this is must have. Now, it's nice to put sanctions and then nothing follows. So we as an organization then say, we've got a team, we've grown it from 3 people to 15 people, we've got a team who's going to help you. So it's not about showing up and saying, do this or else. It's actually saying, do this because it's going to make your organization better, more resilient, more competitive. It's going to attract all sorts of new revenue. And I think that the point was already touched upon, and happy to give some examples. But it's not only going to come with that stick, but also with a support offer. And that's where we make the biggest investment, probably, is in that sort of human resource development, network building, the exact same thing of what is happening here, driving and raising the bar in terms of not only the awareness, but also the willingness and the actual actions that can be proven, measured, demonstrated, and disclosed. And that also then goes back to transparency.
Okay, Henri also mentioned the importance of social license, effectively.
Yeah.
And you can see that in racing very clearly, not least because of the welfare of the horse. I
Of
think
course.
that's one, above everything else. You don't have that in football. So what are, if you like, in terms of those stakeholders, the fans, what are the drivers in football then? If it's, I mean, I really don't know. I've always struggled with this. Most football fans I know probably don't care two hoots, actually, how much it's cost to get to the Champions League final. They're going anyway, and they don't care how they do it. They're going to be there because that loyalty is so great.
Okay, this is getting into tricky terrain now about fan surveys and what fans think.
You
or
said
don't
I could
think.
ask you anyway.
No, I think there's an element of, look, clearly at the level of ticket prices, for example, we're trying to keep the element of accessibility at UEFA. I'm talking UEFA, Europe. For the upcoming Euros in the UK and Ireland, we keep deliberately prices low for the lowest categories and increase them in the higher categories. There is an element of affordability when it comes to mobility. How do you ensure, for example, combined tickets between the match ticket and public transport? We've had examples both in Germany and Switzerland in both men's and women's Euro where we actually say this is normal. If you're a family, you shouldn't, okay, you spend on the ticket, but you shouldn't add sort of double, let alone triple the cost to the additional mobility element. I think fans care a lot about waste management. So there are statistics out there between 600 and 800 grams per fan in a football stadium is sort of generated, of waste generated. So how do stadium managers manage that? What kind of waste environment are you managing from an infrastructural point of view, but also from a fan, let's call it fan experience point of view? How can we improve it at the level of concessions? How can we improve it at the level of supply chains? So ultimately, asking fans, do you care or not? I think it depends who you ask. It depends which generation you ask, but it also depends in which context do you ask. I think, how does a fan care? Does a fan care about how to get to the stadium? I would argue absolutely yes. Is there public transport, yes or no? I would argue absolutely yes. What is the kind of offering within the stadium that makes my stay, makes me feel welcome, safe, included as part of the experience? Absolutely. So it's not only the environmental end, but then it's also the social end with all sorts of measures to have rapid response mechanisms, the challenges around physical accessibility for that specific category of fans, and many other elements, child youth protection, health well-being, etc., including in terms of heat, water management, all of these issues. So I don't want to argue on statistics on fans. I think it's also how the question is asked, but clearly also fan feedback based on what the journey is has shown us that it's worth the investment. It does generate that return, not only in goodwill, but also in terms of feeling, okay, there is a new way of actually trying to think through how these events can be run. Do they generate a footprint? Absolutely. Do we have a responsibility to measure and lower that footprint? 100%. But at least we're trying to sort of change that conversation into how, rather than just saying, okay, this is how it's going to be.
Brent, when you listen to the UEFA experience, is that one that you look to mirror, or just are you going to pick pieces out of that? How, what sort of? I'm interested in how you build your sort of your knowledge base on building your own strategy.
It's a bit of both, isn't it? I mean, there was a comment Filippo made where I looked down to Katie and nodded as though to say, right, we're on that. We've got to get on that. And this links to that carrot.
Which one was that?
The carrot and stick. And the reason I say that is because as a governing body, we are a regulator. And linking back to that point around our own financial challenges and our relationship with government at the moment, yesterday I did an interview where I was speaking about the UK Regulators Code. And the primary objective of that particular code is that regulators should regulate activities in a way which enables those they regulate to comply, but importantly, grow. So it's a collaborative approach. And there were some obvious reasons why I raised that point in terms of the context of our own situation with the Gambling Commission. But this is where us as a governing body can play an important role. We have 59 racecourses across the country. We have a whole range of stakeholders and participants that we license. And that's where we can build out our capacity to help our stakeholders, rather than use the word comply, I would say improve and grow. And we have some that are doing outstanding work, and we'll hear from them over the course of the next 2 days already. But there are others that don't have that perhaps longer term vision, and we can help them with this.
I think one of the things, Filippo, you were saying is you can change behavior rather than necessarily expect it to be a conscious decision from the fan or the stakeholder. It's partly incumbent on the sport to change stakeholders' behaviors.
Yeah, and it links back to James' point also. No, behavior change, of course, at the level of the companies in James' case, but also the influence that the football platform can hopefully have. I don't know enough about the horse racing platform, but certainly the sport, the values it wants to project, and the messages it sends along are certainly an important element to drive a message about reduction, about water management, even about heat. What does it mean in real life? Simplifying the message, not to dumb it down because the audience is dumb, let me be very clear, but because you want to reach as broad as possible an audience away from the technicalities of the day-to-day into how can we use basically that advocacy platform as well along the way.
That's you have education in your title, James, and that is the single biggest challenge. I think that's why everyone's here, actually, to take these messages and spread that word. How do you best do that? Do you do it through the fans? Do you do it by simply changing the way you structure your sport anyway? Is there a one answer?
Yeah, so we did in the midst of all of this political turmoil and other issues seemingly challenging sustainability, we did a bit of a risk assessment. So we worked with KPMG. They did work with companies that did these hugely expensive and detailed risk analyses of different sectors. We did a risk analysis, a dynamic risk assessment for the sustainability movement itself. So we said, what are the key risks that sustainability as a concept is facing? And of course, geopolitics and macroeconomics popped up in there, but at the center of that risk network, if you like, was short-termism, was the central risk, and then followed closely by what we call distance to problem, so people not seeing the problem in their day-to-day lives, and then something else they called fractal dissonance, which is that lack of understanding of how everything connects together as a system. So there are, I think, two key areas when we talk about education and capability building. There's the sort of the technical piece. How do we measure our emissions? How do we enhance circularity? How do we learn from the experiences of peers and of what's worked and what hasn't? But then I think there's also this adaptive or soft skill piece, right? What are the sort of the softer skills that we need to really drive this agenda forward? Things like influence, overcoming, having more resilience to this sort of short-term time frame, working together, collaboration, communication. And so I think there's a two-pronged approach really that's needed, the sort of the technical upskilling, and then also this more adaptive power skill piece that is really critical for people in the sector.
And do you think at all it falls on race courses, for example, where you get the concentration of fans then to be doing more in terms of education? I know there is quite a lot done these days, but we're going to talk about, dare I say it, infectious disease. You don't really want to address that at a race meet, probably. Injury prevention, maybe you don't want to go there at race meets. How do you get those sorts of messages out?
Yeah, I think it's looking at first of all, who the message is coming from, who's the deliverer of that piece of information. And I think UEFA has done a great job as an example there with some of the fan engagement pieces that have actually, a lot of that sustainability messaging has come from the clubs themselves, from some of the club stars, which has helped to connect with individuals and with people. But I think as well, and then it's getting people at the right stages of life and of the day as well. I think it's particularly when we're talking about the business world, if we still look at the management training pieces, the MBAs that are happening, the sort of the training that people go through to get into their careers, it's still very much focused on the kind of the, Milton Friedman-esque greed is good kind of avoidance of all these sustainability topics. So we do need a change there as well in terms of how that training is embedded, how people are onboarded into organizations. So I think there's a mix of different approaches needed.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to you as well in just a moment. So if you have any questions, Val, any show of hands, anyone got a question or two to put? Great, thank you. I'll come to you in just a moment. I just want to ask Henri one other point, first of all, about use of technology, because I think that's one of the areas that you want to emphasize. And how are you putting technology to use then within France Gallo to improve the sustainability of the sport?
It's a very good question because as Brunt, we are very open-minded to use new technology and to have a new proposal on that topic. Obviously, we put in place a new watering system in order to manage in a better way the use of the water, which has been absolutely critical, especially this year with the heat waves. And you know that in the racing sector, we need, especially for the chaff track, we need a lot of water. We need water not only for the races, but also for the training, because and in Chantilly, for instance, at that time, we were in a situation where the use of water could be exceeded the maximum we are allowed to use, and we can face some troubles if we go over the maximum we can use in terms of water. So
troubles being fines, is it?
Troubles, yeah, absolutely. The law is very, very strict on that topic in France. It could be heavy fines or even the maximum in terms of new offences could be go in jail. So it's quite serious on that topic. So watering system is absolutely key. In terms of technology, I'm not sure it's really technology, but we made with this National Federation of Racecourses, which is this institution in common with the Trotting Association, a survey in order to evaluate the availability of water for each racecourse. Because in France, as you may probably know, we've got 231 racecourses. And most of the race meetings, especially in the provinces, are during the summer period. It's historical. And so we made this survey in order to know where we will be in a position in the future to schedule race meetings. And with this survey, it will help us to change the fixture list in the future. So it will base obviously on the weather, because we know that in race courses near the sea, especially in the northwest, of France, and if there is also water available, it will be easier in the future to compete instead of having race meetings in the center of France in the summertime with a very few availability in terms of water. So this survey was very useful for us, and we already started to change the fixture list, especially for jump racing. We had jump racing during the summer period. We had jump racing in our biggest race course, which is Auteuil in Paris. But we decided to change the fixture in order to start earlier and to finish earlier in order to avoid being in a situation whereby we could cancel race meetings or use too much water for watering the track.
Right. Will you also change race times? So you'll do twilight or?
Yeah. Obviously, and we did a lot during the past days, and this weekend, the last weekend also. So we start race meetings at 8:30 in the morning, which is a big task because you can imagine the betting impact. Because in France, the betting turnover is mainly based in the betting shops. 80% of the turnover is based in the betting shops. At 8:30, 9 o'clock, the betting shops are empty. So we need to rethink everything. And when we ask a race course to start a race meetings at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, it has a big impact in terms of attendance, in terms of revenues, food and beverage, and so on. So we have to rethink everything because now obviously we can race earlier or later in the day, but with a lot of impact on the business.
It's going to be the same for you, Brent, presumably. And I understand from certain parts of the world, there are jockeys who do not want to race early in the morning or late at night. And you've got all these different stages within the sort of stakeholder. Are you learning from Henri's messages there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had quite a bit of experience of this very issue back when I lived and worked in Australia in racing. It was a very common thing that we would need to alter times, race times, and move race programs around with hot weather. What we've done in the last 2 years is we've developed a framework for decision making around racing in hot weather that aligns with the UK government's warning system. And that has enabled us to apply a more consistent approach to the way we will make decisions around whether we cancel a race fixture, we move the times, what other mitigations we can put in place to ensure that we're aligned as a responsible governing body with the same messaging and warnings that the government are issuing.
Also actually gets you off the hook, to be honest about it. I mean, you've got someone else making that decision for you, which is not unhelpful.
Yeah, we've framed it in a way that's not entirely bound to governments, hooked into government's framework. It enables some flexibility because, for example, we've seen an increasing trend in the UK where the government weather warnings are being applied on a 24-hour cycle. Now, any of us in the room that are horse people understand that you could transport a horse in the very early hours of the morning or in the evening where it is much cooler, much more comfortable, and the risks to the horse's welfare are significantly decreased. So we've enabled ourselves to have the flexibility to make sensible and pragmatic decisions around that work for our athletes as well.
Right, yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so let's turn to you lot. We've got a question first over here. And I know most of you know each other, but if you would introduce yourself, and that'd be helpful.
Of course. Thank you very much. I'm Tudor Roșca. I'm the Vice President of the Romanian Jockey Club, which is the governing racing authority in Romania. I also wear two more hats. One of them is the Chief of Staff of the Minister of the Environment in my country, that I'm acting as right now, and also an expert in energy management. So with all three hats, I have just a small comment and two questions. One comment is that we recently finished a project in Romania where with EU funding, we built 4 industrial digesters at the 5 major cattle farms in Romania. So those are turning manure into biogas, and it's actually the whole program, the whole investment included peak power plants. So they don't need to transport the gas from there. They just turn it into electricity when the grid is most affected during peak times. And that's a revenue stream for them. So they turned a waste that was a problem to get rid of into 3 usable products. One is electricity, the other one is heat for the cool months, and the third one is bio fertilizer, because the whatever remains can be turned into that. So that was the comment and the idea, where Romania is a very small jurisdiction in horse racing, so we don't yet have the governments or the finances to do this for horse racing. But I believe that such a program could be, for the big jurisdictions, could be very, very useful, where the large amount of manure can be turned into usable products. And the second question would be, because we just finished a year-long water strategy in Romania, which was water payment mechanism, it was called, which was insane to do. It turned into law 2 weeks ago. And the question was, with the racetracks and with the water usage, if there's an option to partner with the municipalities to use the grey water for watering for using it to water the turf, because that way the state, the regulator, cannot say that there's a stress on the water resource. Again, it's a waste product, which is the water that is not 100% treated. It's not drinkable. It's not cannot go for other uses such as general consumption by the population, but it's perfectly fine to water the lawn with or the turf in this case. And if you could or have already started such a discussion with the municipalities.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's focus on that second question first, maybe. Brad, does that?
Yeah, on both those issues, there are examples in the racing world where we are doing those things. So on the first part, I know our colleagues from the Japan Racing Association in Asia have been doing similar with horse waste from training centres, and Hiroshi may be able to talk about that. And in terms of harvesting grey water or harvesting water from the large areas of infrastructure that we have on our race courses, we've got numerous examples of that around our race courses as well, and I'm sure we will probably hear of some of those examples over the course of the coming days. But just in a very simple context, at York Racecourse in Britain have recently installed a very large cover over their presentation area in the paddock, and it harvests any rainwater from that down into a storage facility underground. So, we have many examples of those sorts of initiatives. But perhaps Hiroshi may wish to speak of their efforts in Japan in terms of converting waste into energy. It hasn't been straightforward, as I understand it, Hiroshi.
Hiroshi?
Thank you. At the Japan Racing Association, we have 2 training centers. Each houses 2,000 horses. And we have found out that over 80% of our rubbish that comes out of the racing is the bedding and manures. So what we have done is that we built the biomass combustion plant, which burns the wood chips, shavings, and straws that comes out of the stalls, and which gives us opportunity to process the waste comes out of the racing organization, racing running. But at the same time, we can produce electricity out of the burning mechanism. And we, but once a plant sells the electricity generated to the electricity company, and the other one, we use the electricity that's generated to run the training center.
Thank you, Hiroshi.
But it is a very expensive exercise.
Well, and I think that is the brackets to everything we're discussing is cost as well. The only other thing I was going to say, Henri, when you could go to jail for using too much water, I imagine these innovative ideas are all being put to use, are they?
Absolutely, and Marin could talk about it better than I do. He's working on these 2 topics. The first one is the reuse of the bedding. In Chantilly Training Center, we've got 2,800 horses in training, so you can imagine how big is the bedding. And he's one of the town near Chantilly who is creating that kind of things in order to reuse and to produce new, I'm not sure it's electricity, Marin, but it's gas, yes. It's the use of the gas. So, and we made a lot of improvement on that topic, and hopefully we will succeed this in 2 years. Yeah, in 2 years' time. It's a very long process. And on the second topic, again, Marin worked on this, but it costs a lot of money in terms of storage of this grey water, and there's also another aspect, which is the regulation for reuse this kind of water, because it's very strict in France, but Marin is working on that topic also.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that, Marin, or we leave that for?
Or maybe if you have any question later, but the thing for the reuse is the quality of the water, and the government is very strict, so you can't use the water if there is no filtration first, and that costs a lot of money. And even you are very rich, the government say you have to share this water. So if we clean this water, you can't use it only by one company. So it has to be a public project. So that's why it takes time. So for Chantilly, we are working with the municipality, golf course, polo, and even soccer like that. Everybody can use this reuse. So it takes time to work a big project with plenty of sports, municipality, and government.
It's good to hear the collaboration can go beyond the sport, and it can go actually into the municipality and other sports. James, I just wonder, these must be obstacles faced by different sectors across the piece. Are there any sort of answers to those? Whether it's the cost increase or the complexity of the regulation that makes what you want to do and what is sustainable very difficult to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's when you come back to the collaborative piece, and the collective voice are always very powerful there, right? If you're able to come together as a sector to discuss the solutions for either getting the costs down or working together or coming together with other sectors, whether it's football or whoever, to drive those solutions, that comes forward well. And then you also have the advocacy piece. It's a much more powerful conversation to bring a sectoral voice to a policymaker to drive that agenda forward. And then I think it's that value chain piece, working together with your in this case, I guess, sponsors. In business, it would be investors and others, to try and leverage that capital that's going to help to unlock that. And I don't want to put Filippo on the spot. I know you have some interesting commercial sustainability insights.
Yeah, there's been interesting developments, and if we only could expand on that, absolutely. So how do you look at the relationship building with a current or potential sponsor who wants to invest in football? Obviously, they're going to invest in visibility. So what we call the LED boarding, what you see around the pitch, what's going to be the ticketing part, what's going to be the digital presence, etc. But over and beyond, we see a trend, to James's point, in several of them, not all, in the sponsor family, potential or current, to say, well, what more can UEFA offer? What more can we do to actually support, again, the growth of football? And how can we support it in a way that's sustainable and in a way that reaches not just the elite of the football competitions that we're sponsoring, because that's where they invest the money, but actually down in what we call the football pyramid. So there we see interesting examples from waste management companies, consumer-facing companies saying, how do we drive, for example, messages around health and well-being, in particular nutrition. Got an interesting example with Lidl, the supermarket chain, saying we want to tap into the football pyramid at grassroots level to drive more messaging around the importance of good food and beverage alongside for kids. We see energy companies interested in how do we partner in terms of energy solutions for the football sector. So that's not necessarily then on our campus or on our own little facilities or for exclusively one tournament. It was actually say, how do we look at the football sector, the challenges it faces, and how we can support in alignment, however, with our strategy. So we try to then say, we have a number of strategic goals we have set out, come and join us. And yeah, that's where ideally we can invest further from our end, also on the human resource element, to make that work, because you need specific skills, you need patience, and you need trial and not error, but trial again and again until you get it right at that level of the commercial sustainability partnership.
I think trial and error go hand in hand.
And error, yeah, sometimes.
Thank you very much for that. We're quite short on time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask, are you optimistic about the future question? In fact, I'm going to turn to you lot and say, in all your different sectors, and you're all experts in your field, hands up if you're finding it very frustrating in terms of improving your sustainability effort. Okay, a few. And how many are optimistic about the future? Well, that's more than are frustrated, which is a start. Look, thank you very much. Thank you for the questions as well and the contributions. But most of all, thank you to our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.